here he is, Ram Dass, here and now, the confusion in the paradox.
Usually a lecture is about, the first half of it is straight seduction. Because there is always somebody sitting in the front row saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Sitting, deciding whether or not he or she will listen or let it in. And that's okay, that's part of the work. To be with who you're with in the way you have to be with them. But there is some quality about a gathering such as this, which is more like a big living room at home, where we've already done that. I mean, if you haven't judged that it's acceptable, forget it at this point. So at this point, all we're doing is hanging out. We finished the heavy work. And more of us are aware than ever now that really there's not much to do. And it is in the total irrelevancy of this gathering. Because always we used to have to make it important. I have a serious message to convey. The third Chinese patriarch, with whom I've been hanging out for about a year, he says, I mean, you don't have to believe me, but you can believe him. It sounds legitimate if it's the third Chinese patriarch. He says, do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in confusion. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind essence will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can offend. And when a thing can no longer offend, it ceases to exist in the old way. No trace of this and that, of right and wrong. If I'm sitting with you in the living room, and we recognize that we are sharing a journey together, one of the prevalent topics of conversation besides cosmic gossip, which fills a good part of our time, what do you think of? Is sharing the experiences about the pitfalls, the confusions, the places where it hasn't yet come together. Where you read a Buddhist text, and you read a Hindu text, and you go to a Sufi dance, and you read the Kabbalah, hearing more and more informational input, and it hasn't yet all come together. I worship the one, and I love the one, and I dream of the one, and I'm drunk on the love of the one. And many of my, quote, Buddhist friends think of me as a mushy love and lighter, because I don't have a clean, incisive, Vajra-like approach, which sees that the concept of one is in fact just another illusion. Last year there was a conference that John Lilly and Alan Watts called for us to meet G. Spencer Brown. It was at Esalen. And G. Spencer Brown was an English eccentric who had written some very far-out books. And in one of the book started with a blank page. And then down the middle of the page was a line. And what he was doing was creating a logic to explain the creation of the universe. Simple task. It was the thing, he was doing the thing that Buddha calls absurd. And he said, you start with nothing, and then there's a discrimination. And he put a line down the page. In the beginning is the first distinction, he said. And then you have this and that, yin and yang, dark and light. And from there you build the universe. It's very easy. He says, but the problem is, see, and out of that distinction comes all the values and morals and ethics and sociology and culture and everything. The problem is, in order to have made the first distinction, you had to have a value to begin with. So in a footnote, he points this out, and he says, and since before the first distinction there is no value, in fact, the universe was never created. Therefore, this book is written to be an outline of how it would be were there a universe. And the reason a lot of us have confusion these days is because we're not totally comfortable with paradox. We're still trying to make it all logical. We're still trying to be reasonable about it all. We're still trying to explain why we don't eat meat. Or do eat meat. Instead of just saying, well, it's the way the puck skids. The intellect is an exquisite tool, device, instrument. But it is an absolutely lousy master. The worship of the rational mind which is the foundation of the temple which we are in at the moment, theoretically, since we're in a university. Is the predicament that comes with developing powers, because there is no doubt in any of our minds that our intellect has incredible power. And to use a power tool without getting caught in ego identification with being the actor or identification with the tool itself. Is exceeding difficult because the ego feeds on power. Because ego is the structure of separateness, and separateness's security is based on its power in relation to the rest of the universe, to them or that. And it is this, me, I, versus that, her, him, them, that. And the interface between this and that is very scary when you are this and there is that. And all of the rational mind games have been to control that for the pleasure of this. It's what Florence Kluckhohn in her studies of cultures talks about, cultures of man over nature. And the use of a power tool, in this case the need to control the environment, is very deeply rooted in fear. Fear of being overwhelmed by the environment. Fear of the loss of separateness. And if you're ready for the confusion, for the paradox, that you are in an incarnation which is totally dedicated to the preservation of its own separateness, and you are awakening to the realization that the entire domain of separateness is but another illusion. And so you find yourself marching in a 180-degree opposite direction to everything you learned, everything your body is telling you, all of the deepest structures of ego. This is the battle that is described in the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. And that battle poses to Arjuna exactly the issues of these paradoxes. Because Arjuna has Krishna, who is God, as his charioteer in this case. Drive him down between the two armies the night before the battle begins. And he looks over at the other side, at them, who are his cousins, the Kauravas. And he sees among their ranks his own teachers. He sees uncles. He sees beloved and respected elders of the tribe. He sees old friends. And he throws down his spear and he says to Krishna, the hell with it, I'm not going to fight. Because if I fight this battle, I'm going to lose all of the things I held dear. I can't fight against my teachers, my friends, my relatives. Family will be destroyed, honor, tradition, ritual will all be destroyed. All of the structures of the universe which gave my life meaning are going to be wiped out if I carry out this battle. That's what Arjuna says to God. And God says, well, I'll tell you, you're going to fight anyway. the next 17 chapters are a series of various levels of argument, rationalization, justification, and profound wisdom and vision, which blows out Arjuna's resistance. See, it's easy when you get into, quote, the spiritual path, unquote, whatever that may turn out to be, to bring along all of your old good and evil trips. Well, now I have a good rationale for putting down stealing, lying, lusting, all the things that my parents told me I should put down. Now I've got a good reason, and it's not their old religion, it's my new one. You have to bring your loving consciousness to bear. See, it's easy to get into the good guys and bad guys trip on the spiritual path. But it gets a little scary, a little freaky, a little weird, a little shaky, a little dubious, a little confusing when the good guys become the enemies as well as the bad guys. There is a tradition in Hinduism which is concerned with what's called the three gunas. Three gunas are sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. They are the three strands of the rope that make up the manifestation of the universe. Tamasic is the rock-like, inert, heavy, turned inward in a depressed fashion way. Rock-like. Rajasic is the fire, the action, the doing, the achieving, the accomplishing, the going outward, the going out into forms, the proliferating of forms. Sattvic is the force of the light. It's the straight reflection of the inner light. It's the force that brings you towards the one, towards the light. And each of us is made up of some stranding, some combination of these three strands. So in each of us is a little bit of rajasic stuff, out doing it, making it happen. Western America, pioneer America, is rajasic. There is a good part of India often that's very tamasic. And in all countries, there are some beings who are dominantly sattvic. And what are the stages of the path in relation to the gunas are that in the beginning, as you start to awaken to your predicament, you start to become more and more sattvic. And so then your rajasic and tamasic qualities become stuff you work with in order to convert it to sattvic, to things, forces of light. And in the course of a number of incarnations, you get to the point where you are so sattvic, you are just the essence of beautiful light. are still self-consciously so. At that point in the Indian tradition, you are partway home. But nirguna is the next stage. Beyond Trit, beyond the gunas. Beyond the gunas, beyond sattvic too. And to leave behind sattvic gets pretty scary. Because it's been such a secure place to stand. You always knew just what was right. In India, often when you're in a railway station, you go to pick up your bag and somebody comes along and grabs your bag and you say, "Oh, sir, thank you. Why are you doing that?" He says, "It is my duty. It's my duty." Now, we have a different concept of duty, but there it means that is the sattvic act that I must perform. That's what I do. It's the role that is suitable to what I am becoming, self-consciously undertaken. And as the Panya wisdom gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and your perception gets quieter, so you're seeing more. You get to the point where you are becoming very good, not because you're a goody-goody gumshoes, not because you think you ought to be good, not because somebody tells you to be good, not because you're afraid all hell's going to break loose if you're not good, but just because that's the way it is. That's a whole new way. At that point, you're not doing something because it's your duty. You're doing it because you're doing it, because that's who you've become.